Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are located. Welcome to the session, How Do We Speak the So What of Data? I am the moderator, Bobby Caginelli. I am a sales engineering leader for Calibra, the data intelligence platform. Joined today by an illustrious group of data professionals. If everyone could please introduce themselves and talk to us about what is your role around data in your organization.
Sounds good. I can go first.
Perfect.
I'm a data business partner in the US commercial organization of GSK, and I support our tech and commercial insights teams with data solutions. Good to be here.
And Stephanie?
Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here with everyone today. I am the Director of Business Intelligence and Advanced Analytics at UPS, United Parcel Services.
And Linda?
Sure. Thanks for having us today. Always excited to talk about the so what of data. I'm Linda Powell. I'm the Deputy Chief Data Officer at Bank of New York Mellon.
And Mike.
Hello, Bobby. Thanks for the invitation. I'm Mike, obviously, and I'm head of BI and insights for eFood. eFood is part of Delivery Hero, which is a food delivery app across the world.
Welcome and thank you all for joining us. So let's start with Oyemi. As you have more of a global view in your consultative role, how has the understanding of the importance of data changed in the last few years within the business side of things?
Yes, thanks for that. So I think we've seen the view of data change in a number of different areas. One particular area that we've seen a shift is in the view of data as a defensive tool, as a defensive function. Over the last decade, I think we've seen a lot of regulations, especially in the financial industry, that have led those organizations to become forced to know a lot more about how they operate, produce more accurate and complete reporting, and be able to paint a more complete and accurate picture of their financial posture and their stiff, penalties with non-compliance. So that need for compliance with regulatory obligations have spurred a lot of organizations to take their data management and data governance functions more seriously. But the shift we're seeing now is that organizations are beginning to look at data more opportunistically. What can they do with data besides the keep the lights on stuff, besides the necessary things that they have to do? So how can they exploit data to get more insights that informs them on how they operate, how they can improve their business, how they can incorporate insights into the products and offer personalized services to their customers. And we're also beginning to see approaches emerging in terms of how to monetize the data that organizations have and being able to put some financial value to that and putting that on some form of marketplace. So overall, I'll say one area of big change is from that defensive view to protect ourselves and to be compliant to a more offensive view, which is what can we do with it? How can this help our business? How can this help our revenues? And what opportunities does data unlock for us?
I'd love to quickly add to that. I do think that a lot of organizations are really realizing the need to prioritize data as a part of their overall strategy. And as we've seen the world transform, even more so in the last decade or so, data has become really top of mind for leaders to not only understand what their data is saying, but also be able to pivot really quickly. And the only way to be able to do that is by having data as top of mind with the supporting infrastructures from a skills standpoint, as well as a strategy standpoint and an investment standpoint. So I think that data will become more and more relevant as we venture into the world of AI and ML, we'll talk about in a little bit here. But absolutely, I agree thus far that data is top of mind, top priority.
I agree, and I think it helps with speed to market if you have a lot of data handy, you know where to reach it, you trust it, you can make your decisions off of it. Your speed to market is going to improve and give you a competitive edge. So, Mike and Linda, for both of you, what do you think is the most effective way to bring the business to adopt data-enabled and data-driven decision-making?
Sure, I can start there. So I think the most critical piece is that you have to partner with your business. A lot of folks like to come into data, especially data governance and data management, from a very practical point of view, and put the rules on the table and try and drive people to adopt the metadata and the rules. But if the business doesn't see the value in it, it will never go anywhere. And so what I've really liked to do is when I join an organization, or periodically while I'm in an organization, you have to go around and talk to your business partners and say, what are you having problems with? And don't tell me what your data problems are. Tell me what your business problems are, because I can then figure out how can I help enable your business through data. And there's some business problems I can't help with. And it's good to recognize that. But it's understanding, what does the business need? How can I support the business? And what can I do to, we have a bit of a mantra in data governance, and it's reduce risk, reduce costs, and increase revenue. If I'm not doing one of those things through my day-to-day activities, I'm not doing my job, and the business will never find the value in what I'm doing. And that's how you get the funding, is if the businesses recognize that, oh, you know what? I called Linda with my problem and she solved my problem. We're gonna keep funding Linda's program because we can solve more problems.
Yeah,
Absolutely, Mike. Yeah.
Fully agree with Linda. And since we're all data people here, it is not worth to say that Gartner did the research, and 87% of organizations worldwide mentioned that they feel they have very little maturity. Imagine 90, almost 90%, and just 20%, so only 1 in 5, accepted that they have a data-driven culture. So we've heard about data-driven culture all over the place for the last X amount of years, and we're still not there. And I think one major problem is what Linda said. You cannot force people to adopt data. You cannot force people to say that they're data-driven. They have to see the value. And every similar discussion is not about technology or advanced stuff that we're going to discuss in way. It's always about the culture and the value. If the stakeholder cannot see the value, no matter if you have AI and ChatGPT and all that sexy stuff, they won't adopt it. So from my point, it's the culture. So essentially try to understand what is their problem. And another thing that I would say, and it's part of my role as well, don't be just the data guy or the infrastructure guy, be the insights guy. So yeah, our customers fail, our revenues rise. Okay, that's a dashboard. But why something happened and what actions do I need to do in order to, drive my business forward? That's the essence for me. So if you can answer questions and then you can quantify them, then believe me, people will come to you instead of you chasing around and say, look at my dashboard or send me an email and stuff like this.
Yeah, I'm gonna piggyback on that a little bit, and don't get stuck in your swim lane is the other thing. I'm the global head of data governance. Like, yes, I have a lot of day-to-day work, but it's also when somebody comes to me with a problem that has the word data in it and might have nothing to do with the actual data, I don't say, oh, that's not my problem. I say, well, let's figure out how we can solve that problem together, because it's got the word data in it. So the first person they thought of was me, and I want them to keep thinking about me because I can help them with a lot of the problems. So a lot of times it's get out of your swim lane too, and help to dig down and use those insights and analysis.
That's a really great point. When they're coming to you, you want them to keep coming to you. The more buy-in you get. We have a great question. What kind of data is most relevant to the organization's goals and objectives, do you think, and how do you communicate that to the stakeholders?
Well, I'm going to say it depends on your business need. So I'm in banking, so obviously our financial data, our customers, and our clients are front and center, making sure that whatever data we need to support them and make a better customer experience, as well as provide information to them to help them in their financial lives. So I think every company and every business line will have a different answer to that.
I think Linda is absolutely right. It varies by industry, by function. But I will say this though, that in almost every organization, you're rendering a service or creating a product to serve some customers, right? So you always need to know about your customers, their sentiments, their behaviors, their feedback, so that you can deliver products and services that speak to them, that meet their expectations. So, and you also want to know about your markets, your competition, what else is out there, and what environments are you operating in. So I think those are categories of data that almost span across every industry, but specifics will differ.
Great point. Great point. Stephanie, what barriers do you find still exist around the business adopting data best practices?
Great question. I think one of the biggest barriers is that cultural shift that is required almost as a prerequisite in order to be successful at nurturing different types of data practices. So I think bringing data to the root of your culture is very, very important, as well as changing the dialogue that you've typically known. And I've heard it so many times throughout my career. Well, we've been doing this for X amount of time. Why should we change it now? Exposing what that art of the possible looks like to bring everyone along for the ride. And a lot of organizations are having to truly transform the way that they work versus those that are tech forward, that have had data at the heart of what they do for a long time. The later adopters are going to face a larger challenge because they have to get up to speed quickly. And as we all know, technology changes every single day. The moment that you think that you've mastered something new has come out that you have to get up to speed all over again with. So I think the biggest barrier to overcome is that cultural requirement to really understand, value, and drive data at the heart of what you do. And then the second thing I think is upskilling that knowledge, right? So not everyone that's going to be involved in data is going to be a developer or have that tech savvy frame of mind. I think it's also important to bring everyone along for the ride, whether it's a matter of publicizing terminology. There's been talks recently around digital fluency as well as data fluency that not only nurtures that culture, but also helps to solicit the importance of why you should adopt best practices.
Yeah.
So if I, sorry, Linda, very quick one. If I had just to say one thing, I would say it's the data silos, which the solution is the single source of truth. So I've seen companies, I'm not referring to big companies like worldwide, even small ones, you have 3 different departments with 5 different reporting lines and databases and sources, Salesforce, Excel, A4 pages, notepads and stuff. And if you ask how many customers do I have, you will get 5 different answers. And this one breaks the confidence of the department. So if you cannot answer how many customers I have, like by 3 people, then I won't trust you to do an analysis. And it's the other thing is that it drives competition. So if you have 3 or 4 or 5 different sources of truth, then each one wants to protect their own, and this create clashes, and then we come back to the culture thing. So that's my input on this.
Yeah, I was just going to mention my strategy for dealing with the culture change, and I think Stephanie's right. I've always done it this way. Why do I have to change now? And we can all have a million reasons why. What I've really tried to do is leverage every crisis, whether it's big or small, to push a culture change. And we all have little crises. If you're trying to create a report for somebody and you got 3 different answers, blow it up into a bigger crisis than it really is to not a crisis, but use that as your mantra for why you really need to have a customer master as opposed to 3 or 4 different silos of data. And so I take the problems that people are having, and unfortunately a couple of times in historical age organizations, I've had some big crises where we've had to say, all right, I think it was Rahm Emanuel used the phrase, never waste a good crisis. And so use those as learning opportunities and a catalyst to be able to go in and actually create change within the organization.
I'll just add briefly 2 quick things. If you asked your typical business user that question, what barriers are they facing, they'll likely tell you data quality. I don't trust the data, right? So, and that continues to be a major non-ending problem wherever you turn. So getting your business users and business teams to trust the data and be able to use that data, that's always a challenge. Data is never going to be perfect, but getting your data quality management program to a state where people feel confident enough to leverage it for their users. The second I will quickly call out is how we data professionals approach data problems. You often see that data issues are often addressed as a technology problem, putting the how in front of the why. So it's always fun and interesting to get the latest tool in the market that gives you some capability, which is good, but we must always remember to ask the question, why are we doing this? What part of our business strategy is this capability or this solution enabling? So putting technology before strategy is a problem we've all seen too many times, but we must always continue to ask ourselves, are we solving a tech problem or are we solving a business problem?
That is such a great point. The tool is there to enable the strategy that you already have and to help with the tactical performance of that strategy, but it doesn't solve the strategic issues if you don't have that strategy up front. That's a really great point. So Mike, because you really focus on the business intelligence side of things, how can the business intelligence teams best support the needs of the business?
Lots of ways, actually. But to be more practical, I would say that the data maturity of a company can be split into 3 phases. Like the first one is just reporting numbers, the famous descriptive analytics, which is answer what is happening right now. So the first and most basic one is to know what's happening right now. The second level is the predictive analytics, like what will happen in the future. A bit more sophistication, a bit more mature companies are there. And for me, the final level, well, there are hundreds other, but let's assume that there is only one. The third one is the famous prescriptive analytics, which is the ideal. It's what shall I do in order to get there? So if my target for the next year is to increase revenues by 10%, then ideally I want my BI department to come and say, you need to do this to your users, or you need to increase your campaign effectiveness by such, you need to go to this network because this channel does not work. So the third one, the prescriptive, is the ideal. But if we put a step back, I would say that the BI is one of the, maybe the only department that has, an X-ray vision across the whole organization. If we take a typical bank, for example, the BI should have access about everything customer related, like when they open the account, how old they are, balancing stuff. They can see what was the last time that they called, if they resolved their issue that they had, how often do they call our customer center. And then you have, if they responded to a campaign, if they saw a banner and clicked it or not, if they have a high NPS score, how do they respond to, emails, calls, SMSs, how often do they go to the branch? So, customer analytics can tell you everything about customer. The financial department can tell you everything about balances and stuff. But BI is the department that can combine everything and get you an idea, how likely is, Mike to leave, how happy he is, and what are the best channels to reach him. So even if you just take the descriptive, like what is happening right now, BI can support. And then the more sophistication you add, like prediction, forecastings, simulations, financial models, etc., then in an ideal world, you can go and say, look, Mike, our next 5-year plan is to go to this market, attract X amount of customers, and increase our revenues by X. What shall we do? And this is, for me, this is the ideal world.
So really, the BI teams need to be in lockstep strategically with the goals of the business, short and long term, to really be able to drive those analytics that you're talking about.
Yeah, of course. For me, BI should not be, data departments in general, but especially BI should not be a isolated department sitting 3 floors in the underground and, typing in 3 screens, etc. For me, BI should be an internal consultant, like a partner, and every single meeting that's, deciding something should have at least one person from BI in order, to provide the data. And secondly, more importantly, you want to train your BI to come with answers by itself. So I don't want to sit and say, Bobby, please create a dashboard that will show, revenues by week and then by department and then by product. I want, to sit in a meeting with your BI. I will just express my business problem and what keeps me up at night. We don't have enough budget. Our competition increased. We have inflation. And then I want my data people to go back, scan everything and come back to me with 3 ideal solutions. For me, that's the essence of BI, and not, using the latest flashy, trendy tools.
And one thing I would like to add is, given where we are in the industry today with the rates of change, rates of innovation, I think it's becoming more and more important for in-house BI teams to begin to build those external alliances, those external partnerships, so that they can complement the tools that they have in-house. 2 years ago, it was all about we needed more data engineers, more software engineers. Today, we're hearing we need AI prompt engineers. Who knows what's going to be next year? So technology is changing, the landscape is changing, business expectations are changing as well. But you cannot change your in-house team that frequently. So I think it's becoming more critical to build external partnerships that complement your in-house skills so that you can scale and be flexible as you need and address varying and changing business and technology demands.
I think that's a great point. I think we've all seen before where we would just receive dashboards that weren't really impactful, didn't really speak to our business needs, but that's what people thought was needed. And now it's a much more interactive give and take between those teams to make sure that what we're creating is meaningful to the business and actionable. I can look at this and figure out what I need to do based upon the information you just gave me. Great insights. So Stephanie, where do AI and ML fit into the data landscape?
Great question. So AI and ML is somewhat sophisticated, right? So there's a place for it depending on where you are in your data journey as an organization. In some cases, AI and ML may be at the very forefront of what you're trying to do, and some we may be further away from where we need to be in order to be ready and prepared to incorporate AI and ML into our current environment. So to speak to a little bit about UPS, we are still on our journey to become more data centric, as well as drive a net new ways of thinking as well as executing. With the more recent trends around AI tools like ChatGPT is probably one of the biggest buzzwords that I'm hearing across a variety of venues. How do we manage the expectations around that, as well as try to make steps forward, even though we don't necessarily feel prepared to do so? And I think a part of being able to fit that into the data journey is planning ahead, building that long-term vision on a roadmap and exposing what that looks like for those that are curious. So right now, my main initiative is focused on prioritizing how we use data, as well as building out the foundations. So building out the data warehouses and the platforms, and then curating that experience for the business so they can see what the next steps are and when and at what point will we be comfortable, as well as prepared to take on net new AI capabilities as well as machine learning capabilities. I do think machine learning comes before AI. AI is self-evolving, and while it is human dependent, it will continue to learn on its own. Whereas with machine learning, it is required for that human intervention, right? So if we're thinking about, let's say, perhaps building out a forecast, that's going to take a variety of factors, whether it be from the market or competitive research. Machine learning will help you build out those logistical regressions to help you forecast and predict what that future looks like. However, AI is going to grab knowledge from any and everywhere and create points of view and perspectives based on what it's learning at a time. So I do think it's important to manage the expectations of the business, but also let them know that you're aware what the priorities are for the organization, and working towards getting there to incorporate those capabilities. Because you have to take one step at a time. It's important to make sure that you're addressing everything that comes before these advanced technologies before you actually take on the initiatives to deploy them.
Stephanie, a quick question, just because it would be really interesting. So does your ML team sits under a central hub, or is it sits under functions like operations, marketing, logistics, and stuff?
Great questions. Great question. And this is going to differ for every single organization within UPS, because we are so large, a little over 500,000 employees worldwide. We have to have a decentralized sort of spoken hub model in order to be able to execute a lot faster. So there is machine learning capabilities as well as skill sets throughout the organization, within IT as well as within the business. My team houses all of the machine learning capabilities within my BI and advanced analytics team that is right now servicing finance. However, there are peers that exist throughout the organization that are servicing marketing, that are servicing sales, and then we come back and cross-collaborate and strategize together. But it is important for such a large organization to have that presence in a decentralized manner. However, I have worked for other environments. I was with Red Hat, open tech software company, prior to being at UPS. Their model is very different, very centralized, but again, very different landscape. They only have, I want to say, under maybe 20,000 employees compared to UPS's 500,000 employees. So the mission of having a centralized approach works well for their organization, but I do think it's important for you to assess the needs of your organization, consider your size as well as your scale, and figure out what works best for you.
Cool, thank you.
Sure, Mike.
So Linda, especially being in banking, what are the guardrails that you think are needed around AI and ML? We're hearing a lot about, you might be sharing very sensitive information with your AI and your ML that could inform others, et cetera. So what are those guardrails that you would be looking to implement?
Yeah, so I think it's important for every organization. We're on a data call, so most people are probably familiar with the very famous Target case where they predicted a teenage pregnancy, and I think we all want to stay out of that realm in the public sector. So what we're doing is, before we're really heavily involved, there's like an emergence of technology, artificial intelligence and machine learning going on. And so we're making sure that before we get heavily involved in these activities, we're setting up the ethics and governance frameworks on how we use data. And we're asking the question and building it into our governance framework. Should we do something? Not just can we do something? Now, in banking, a lot of it is, there's privacy laws, there's a million laws that we have to adhere to, and we've always done that, and we've always asked that question, and we're very compliant with all the laws, and that covers a lot of the decision making in the banking realm. But there's also the questions about, should we use data for certain things, even if we have the right or the ability to do it? Is that what is best for our customers, is the number one question. And is that what is best for our employees? So we're heavily embedding the should we question into all of the analysis.
That's a great point. And I would say, from my perspective, that, if you have AI and ML in your tooling around data, it can be very helpful. I know our tool can recognize data classes, do some of that classification. There's observability around data quality that can be plugged in to train
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of great ways to utilize some of those technologies, but the should we, the moral, the ethical side of things is a great step back that people should be taking before they decide to move forward with those items.
I'll mention that my boss just did a very a great presentation with a company called Quintexa, where we're using intelligence to review our data quality, to get rid of duplicates and identify where we have different potential errors, because that helps our customers. If I have one great customer master as opposed to multiple customer masters or duplicates in my customer master, that really helps our customers. It helps the customer experience. So that's where we answered the question, should I? Yes, because it doesn't just help us as a firm, it helps the customers and the client experience, and there isn't there's not really a downside to it. So it's really setting up the framework of when are you going to use it and when do you not, and having some good guiding principles around that.
And I also think that probably legal, as you've alluded to, legal implications to this as well, because typically when you're collecting data, you need consent to do so, and you need to disclose the permitted use cases for the data you're collecting. But with these new technologies, generative AI, the data that these have been trained on and how the outputs will be used, there is little way for you to prove that you got consent to use the data and the outputs in such manner. And also, when, there are a lot of people playing around with these technologies, and it's cool. And when you see these things imitating the voices of people and videos and creating text out of proprietary information, you begin to wonder, are we on a legal pathway here that we don't have clear answers to? So I think for organizations that are looking to deploy or leverage such technologies, their information privacy professionals will have to have a significant role to play to help them navigate and understand what kind of inputs are going into this. Do we have legal basis to collect? Do we have consents to use it for how we're going to use it? Are there proprietary information that we're using it for? And also people need to be educated, right? Not all the outputs from this are correct. We've seen many instances of that. So if your technology is generating incorrect information about people, then how do those people have a right or a means to correct those data sets about themselves? So those are issues and concerns that I think in the months and years to come, both the legal and data privacy professionals are going to have to navigate through.
Great points. Great points. Let's go to some of the questions that have come up in the chat. Are any of you measuring decisional performance, the efficacy and efficiency of decision-making in the organization, and the impact of data on improving decisional performance? And if so, what metrics are you using? Great question, Scott. So how do we measure the success of those predictive models? How are we making sure that the insights that were drawn were accurate? And so we're effectively actioning those items.
Great question. I'll take a stab at that one. So I think, again, kind of curated based on the experience for your customers, as well as what the business is asking, in order to figure out what is the metric or series of metrics that is relevant to your organization in order to hold them accountable. So I'll take a current use case that I mentioned a little earlier, UPS, modernizing how we forecast the basics, just revenue, volume, cost. Sounds pretty simple, and it is a very long and winded initiative simply because of our landscape. We are so huge, and there are so many varieties of sectors that we need to track separately. Now, in terms of measuring our performance and those predictive models, et cetera, I think it's a matter of educating what best looks like, what's the best practice that is executing on where we want to be, and what does that look like. So we have a benchmark, as well as, since it's something that is net new at UPS, partnering with a market research company. I think Mike mentioned Gartner. Gartner is also one of my favorite market research companies out there to help us figure out what best looks like, define it, and then work towards that. Building automated tracking mechanisms through means of a dashboard or some sort of similar data visualization, where your business leaders can quickly go in and measure how accurate or how inaccurate we are, I think is also important to bring them along for the ride. And then taking it a step further is holding not only the development teams accountable, but also the business owners of the particular initiatives accountable for it as well. So it's a shared role, and also being flexible, because again, with the world of predictive, we are doing quite a bit of assumptions based on a variety of factors, whichever they may be, but you have to be able to be nimble and edit and iterate as you go, as you learn, as the models continue to learn, and incorporate a variety of factors for that accuracy measurements.
So I think it's a great question, and it's an important question. How do you measure if the work that you're doing is actually impactful? And when we got the question, I was trying to think of the best example, because I think the short answer is yes, we do that, and I think you need to do that. And so let's talk about data quality. Everybody cares a lot about data quality. We can measure the data quality based on the rules that we've written to identify errors in the data. We can see how well we're doing with our programs to improve data quality. But you also need to measure the so what. And that's figuring out, if I had perfect data quality, what would be different in my organization? And so in banking, we're looking at things like the number of adjustments that are made to the general ledger. If my data is perfect, I would not have to make adjustments at the end of the day. If my data were perfect, I wouldn't have to make adjustments in the reporting layer. I might never have to refile a report to a regulator. So we're looking at the things that tell me the so what and measuring those. And my expectation, we're, in the middle of our program for uplifting our data governance, but as my data quality scores increase, my adjustment measurements should be decreasing. And if they're not, then I'm not measuring through data quality the right things. So I need to adjust what I'm measuring to get to my so what. So I think for every company, it's going to be a little bit different, but figuring out the so what of what you're trying to solve and measuring for that. And that can actually be really hard. But that's the important thing to measure.
And I would say that and you're both absolutely right. It's an it depends answer, right? It depends on your industry, what you're doing. And as a data industry collectively, this industry is not as mature as other industries in terms of frameworks to measure specific things or outputs and impacts. It's definitely not as mature as, say, the accountant field or maybe even project management, right? So there is still a lot of growth and maturing that needs to happen. But I will say that if for whatever data products that we're building or model or whatever, we have to upfront agree and align with our key stakeholders on what's the outcomes that they're hoping to drive, and agree upfront how to measure them. So you can't have a blanket measuring indicator or set of indicators. You have to almost align on a use case by use case basis, on a data product by data product basis, to say, for these data products, we are hoping for it to do this for us, and how do we measure that it's doing that? It may help to engage with your financial partners to put some financial value to the impact you're making. That's excellent if you're able to do that, but it's a discussion that has to happen upfront before starting off on data initiatives and tracking through that. There is no one global answer.
Great point. Great point. So we've got just a couple of minutes left, and some of the questions would be a little too in-depth. So I'm going to start with an easier one here. Should data governance be rebranded to data literacy? And I actually, before coming to Collibra, built a governance practice at a financial services company. And the first thing my CFO said was, please don't call it governance. When I hear the word governance, I think overhead, no return on investment, boring, something we have to do, but not something we want to do, not something that drives value. So our working group was the data usage working group, because a lot of people would say, well, I use data. So yes, if you can rebrand it to something that's going to be more impactful. I've heard data literacy, I've heard data enablement, I've heard data democratization. How do you guys do the marketing of data to your business teams?
I can take this one. So personally, sorry, but I hate all those buzzwords and acronyms because they change constantly. For me, everything is like, as you said, like a marketing term. For me, it's only two questions. A, are my data correct? Can I trust them? And two, can I understand them? So for me, everything data literacy, data governance, data security, and all these new words that's coming basically comes down to these two questions, essentially. So if you need all the deduplication or the data quality or the checks or the governance or the safeguards, the guardrails and stuff, is do I trust my data and can I understand them? So for me, the meaning is not relevant. Every data department should, make the stakeholders feel confident, because no matter how you name it, if they don't trust it, they don't care if you have a proper data governance, initiative or a CDO. They will care if they can trust the data, A. And two, they don't care if you have the most advanced schema or database or data catalog, whatever. if I need to ask, 5 people consequently in order to understand how you calculate your margin, then I simply don't care. So instead of
Yeah.
focusing on the acronyms and on the words, is this: do I trust the data? Do I understand the data? If you have this, then it solves half of your
Words
problems
don't
right
matter.
away.
Yeah. I think
We
rather
did
than,
have,
I was going to say, I think rather than changing the words, change the impression of the words. So
Change the
make
perception.
governance cool, make governance helpful, make people want to come to your data governance team because they're the ones who will help you solve your business problems.
That's a great place to wrap. We are at time, but thank you all for your active participation in the panel. Really look forward to meeting with others as we continue through the rest of the next 2 days with the summit. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation. Bye.